Hi. So, the Hedge Knight. I think that George R. R. Martin's novella, which I didn't even know he wrote novellas. I guess it shouldn't be surprising considering how much he has written. I think he definitely fits even Mick Owen's particulars for a novella. I did read it in two sittings. Um, by the time that it ended, I was both unnerved and satisfied, and my whole heart just ached. This story was so good. It just broke my heart, and I will be the first to admit I don't like medieval knight stories, partially because of how thoroughly disturbing jousts are to me, for many reasons. So I didn't want to like this story. I really didn't. And the first quarter of it, I was like, oh god, why? To be bluntly honest. So the fact that I really did like it by the end, and want to keep reading. I'm glad that it's in the collection, because I really do want to keep reading now to learn more about Dunk and Egg and all of them. So it's very self-insular, which in this case is a very good thing. The details and setting were frankly overwhelming. This world was as immersive as anything I've ever read, and at points it was just too much. I had to take it in bites, because of how many different names there were, how many crests, the sheer amount of colors that he uses in all of his descriptions are both great and a little jarring, because just he sees the world so vividly. It's like the classic thing of telling a kid reading a book is like watching a movie in your head, and this satisfied that to a T. I haven't read Game of Thrones yet, not from lack of desire, just from lack of time. But just reading this novella, I can see why Martin is so popular. Just he is an incredible storyteller. The characters are definitely given in quick strokes. From everybody from the knights who later side with Dunk or against him, to Egg, his family, the royals. Sorry, my dog is messing with stuff. Also with the puppeteers and how, the puppets are described, all of these things come together to form just a classic, twist on the chivalry of knighthood and the joust and the duel of honor and all of that. Through concentrated details and pointed description, along with their dialogue and actions, we're given vivid shades of who these people are and how they interact in this world. And I know it's the most disturbing part, but it's one of the pieces I wanted to share was when Aeon, I think is how you pronounce his name. Let's see here. Arion kills the horse. Which even I knew, as little as I know about joust, I know enough about it to not like it. Even I knew that's something you don't do. You don't aim for a man's horse. You can take his armor and his shield as is described in the novella. You don't mess with his horse. This was very clearly a deliberate act of cruelty, and it was one of the parts of description that just, it shook me to my core. I was both impressed and horrified. And it also illustrated that, again, the brief strokes, yes, we get to know Dunk pretty quickly, but also how Dunk changes over the period of these few days from being this semi-knight. He proves himself a knight by the end, when his master dies, at the beginning, to, at the end, turning down a knighthood. But the part that I really appreciated, so Dunk felt sick himself. This is on page 67. Dunk felt sick himself. What would I do if such a fate befell Thunder? And I really appreciated how that showed in those quick strokes. We've just met Arion, and he's already proven himself to be cruel and vindictive for no reason. And Dunk's first thought is, what if that happened to my horse? There's nothing that warms my heart more than a man who cares about his animals. And I grew up on a ranch, so the horse part especially, I was just like, let me at him. So that was a really great concentration on that. It's also clear that the heart of the narrative is, which is also in McEwan's definition, is Dunk's search for what it means to be a knight. Is he even a knight? And even after his victory is marred by tragedy, he chooses the life of his Hedge knighthood over the glamorous one of grand halls that he's fantasized about. There aren't any loose ends. It's very theatrical, dramatic, and self-enclosed. Like, all the major ties are put together. You have a jumping board to go into more stories at the end when he leaves with Egg, to go on more adventures. So you still have that, but nothing in the original narrative is left other than what's necessary. The level of knowledge Martin has of his own world and every single possible detail and nuance is astounding and mind-boggling. Like I said before, I don't even like these stories, but I grew to like it by the end. And he also Martin uses the world's descriptions to tell us about the social structure of the world, using what could have been dull exposition for narrative fuel. We both learn about the world and its motivations while being given necessary information for the world to take shape around us. So we're both given steps and details that take the narrative forward, like with Arion killing the horse. He uses that as a very vivid way of showing who Arion is going to be and how he takes place later in the narrative. But it's also expositional in how that violates the chivalry rules and the normal pieces of a joust. This novella, like Noon Wine, provides a lot of information that builds to a heightened tension and leaves nothing to fall to the wayside. There's a building attachment to characters, as well as the fear of death, the heightened drama of family betrayal on both sides, and the death of a good man, Prince Baylor, who died doing the right thing, for good or ill. And you also, like I said before, have the promise of future adventures. This novella teaches the necessity of knowing your world as intimately as possible, giving details that both saturate the reader's consciousness and whets their appetite for more. I could definitely learn from his expert use of exposition, in that I use exposition, but I like giving it in a different way, and Martin's use of it in chunks and doing it well, to power the narrative, was like, oh, I could learn to do this more in my own work, even though I'm not world building, and that does make a difference, but he's an expert at this. It was great. Also, just overall, just learning like the shape of a narrative, being realistic, providing something to the world of literature and the world just in general. He gives such a blunt, brutal view of good versus evil with mixed results, and that's something that makes a true narrative. It's not overly dark, but it's real, and gives a view of what living in the world with a moral compass often feels like. Like, if you're a decent person trying to make your way, this is often what will happen. Yeah, I definitely, I'm glad that I read this. I'm glad this was an assignment in the class. Definitely learned a lot from it, and now I'm very intrigued to keep reading Martin. So, yeah.